If this video showed up in your feed, it wasn't by chance. Carl Jung referred to moments like this as synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that point to something significant unfolding beneath conscious awareness. You're here because you've moved through an experience that most people never come out of unchanged. Jung found that life brings what he called the final test, a confrontation with the unconscious so powerful that it either breaks you or reshapes you into something entirely new. Here's what makes this insight so important. Most people going through this test believe they're falling apart. They assume something has gone seriously wrong with their mind. But Jung understood that they're actually undergoing a breakthrough, the precise moment when consciousness expands beyond its former limits. And if you're still watching, still questioning, still trying to make sense of what happened to you, you've already crossed the threshold. The real question now is whether you understand what this passage has revealed. Because once you grasp what Jung uncovered about this transformation, everything that once felt like suffering suddenly shows itself as initiation. The final test doesn't arrive with announcements or warnings. It comes disguised as crisis, disaster, or collapse. You might feel suddenly cut off from people you believed would always be in your life. Everything that once mattered, career goals, social approval, the identity you carefully built, starts to feel empty and pointless. This isn't clinical depression. It's what Jung described as the withdrawal of psychic energy from outer objects. Music. Your unconscious is drawing you inward because something essential must change. The signs are clear once you know how to recognize them. You lose interest in keeping up the social masks that once felt necessary. Small talk becomes exhausting. Superficial connections feel suffocating. You can't fake excitement for things that used to motivate you. Friends and family notice the shift and become concerned. They think something is wrong. They want you to go back to how you were. But what they don't see is this. You can't return, because you've outgrown the psychological container that once held you. Your psyche now demands more space, more honesty, more authenticity than your old life could provide. This isn't regression. It's growth that appears like collapse to those still living unconsciously. The isolation you experience during this phase serves a precise function that Jung documented across hundreds of cases. When you're alone, stripped of validation and distraction, you're forced to meet your real self instead of the version you perform for the world. Most people spend their lives avoiding this meeting. They fill every moment with noise, activity, and other people's expectations so they never have to face what arises in silence. Who am I beneath these roles? What do I truly want, as opposed to what I was trained to chase? Which traits are genuine, and which are survival patterns formed to avoid rejection? These questions are frightening because they don't come with simple answers. They require sitting with uncertainty and ambiguity. But this capacity to tolerate the unknown is exactly what develops during the final test. You're learning how to exist without the psychological supports most people rely on for their entire lives. Jung himself passed through this exact process, and his experience became the basis for understanding the final test. In 1913, at age 37, Carl Jung was at the height of his career. He was Sigmund Freud's chosen successor, the future of psychoanalysis, with a successful practice and international recognition. Then something inside him fractured. He began having visions and hearing voices. His colleagues believed he was having a psychotic collapse. Jung himself feared he might be losing his mind. He lost his relationship with Freud. His professional future became unstable, and he entered what he later called his confrontation with the unconscious. For 6 years, Jung descended into inner territories that deeply unsettled him. He recorded this journey in what became the Red Book, a vast work filled with visions, conversations with inner figures, and illustrations of experiences that seemed to arise beyond conscious control. From the outside, Jung appeared to be unraveling. He withdrew from public life, stopped publishing academic work, and devoted himself entirely to exploring his inner world. His wife, Emma, feared for his sanity. Colleagues questioned whether he would ever return to professional life. Some openly claimed Jung had completely lost his mind and would never practice psychology again. But Jung was doing something radical that would transform depth psychology. He treated his own psyche as a laboratory, consciously engaging with the unconscious material emerging instead of suppressing or medicating it. He practiced what he called active imagination, entering dialogues with inner figures from his visions. He drew mandalas to give shape to psychological states beyond language. He allowed emotions and insights that traditional psychology would have labeled pathological. Through this work, Jung realized that what appeared as madness from the outside was actually a natural developmental process. The psyche was reorganizing itself at a deeper level. Empaths aren't broken, they're alchemists in formation, integrating unconscious material and forming a more complete self. Jung wasn't going insane. He was becoming sane in a way most people never dare. This is where Jung's story exposes a controversy that still unsettles mainstream psychology. Society labels experiences like Jung's as mental illness, crises requiring medication and confinement. But Jung discovered something else entirely. It was an initiation, a necessary death and rebirth of the psychological self. The final test is the point where your old identity has to die so something more genuine can take its place. This isn't symbolic. It's an actual psychological death in which everything you thought you were begins to dissolve. The debate isn't about whether this experience is painful. Everyone agrees that it involves suffering. The controversy lies in Jung's assertion that this suffering is necessary, meaningful, and ultimately constructive. Modern psychiatry often tries to suppress these states with medication. Jung argued that they must be consciously lived through and integrated. This core disagreement still marks the divide between Jungian psychology and conventional mental health approaches. When someone in the middle of their final test looks for help today, they're often diagnosed with depression or anxiety and prescribed medication to restore their previous level of functioning. But that earlier functioning was the very issue. The psyche is attempting to break into a higher level of awareness, and medication frequently only delays the transformation that needs to happen. The final test unfolds through 3 clear stages, each one removing another layer of psychological defense until only the essential self remains. Understanding these stages allows you to recognize where you are in the process, music, and what lies ahead. The first stage is what Jung called the withdrawal of projection. For most of your life, you've projected your power outward. You blamed others for your struggles. You handed authority figures control over your self-worth. You made other people responsible for your happiness or suffering. You expected romantic partners to complete you. You waited for your parents to finally give the approval you've wanted since childhood. You looked to your boss or society to validate your value. In the first stage of the final test, these projections suddenly fall apart. You stop seeing your parents as all-powerful figures who destroyed your life. You stop believing your partner holds the key to your fulfillment. You stop allowing your boss or society to define your worth. This collapse feels like loss because you're giving up the comforting illusion that someone else is responsible for your life. But in reality, it's your first experience of real power. You're reclaiming the psychic energy you scattered across people and situations outside yourself. For the first time, you're forced to see that both the problem and the power were always within you. Nobody is coming to rescue you. Nobody can fix what's broken. Nobody else has the answers you're looking for. This realization is crushing and freeing at the same time. Once projection withdraws and you're left face to face with your own responsibility and power, you enter the second stage, what Jung considered the hardest part of the entire process. You encounter your shadow, the parts of yourself you've spent your life denying, repressing, and projecting onto others. Your shadow holds everything you've labeled unacceptable, the anger you never allowed yourself to express, the selfishness you condemned, the cruelty you insist you don't possess, the sexuality you judged as wrong, the ambition you dismissed as arrogance, the laziness hidden behind constant productivity, the neediness masked as independence. Every disowned trait becomes visible here. What makes the shadow encounter so frightening is that you can no longer pretend these qualities aren't part of you. You clearly see that you're capable of the same behaviors you've judged most harshly in others. You realize that your strongest criticisms were always descriptions of your own rejected traits. This feels like a moral collapse. If you contain all of this darkness, what does that mean about your goodness? If you're capable of manipulation, cruelty, and selfishness, how are you different from the people you condemned? But Jung uncovered something that changes the entire shadow experience. Integrating the shadow doesn't make you immoral. It makes you whole. The shadow isn't evil. It's unconscious. The traits you repressed aren't destructive by nature. They become destructive only when they're denied and expressed unconsciously. When you bring shadow material into awareness and accept it as part of yourself, it loses its dangerous charge and becomes usable energy. Rage turns into healthy boundaries and self-protection. Selfishness becomes necessary self-respect and prioritization. Cruelty becomes discernment about who deserves your kindness and who abuses it. Sexuality becomes creative life energy. Ambition becomes focused drive toward meaningful goals. Once these qualities are conscious, they no longer control you from the shadows. You choose when and how to express them instead of having them erupt in harmful ways under stress or pressure. Shadow integration demands ruthless honesty about your capacity for darkness. You must admit that yes, you can lie when it benefits you. Yes, you can hurt others when you feel threatened. Yes, you're capable of manipulation, selfishness, and cruelty. This admission feels like losing innocence or moral superiority. In reality, it's the beginning of true ethics. When you acknowledge your darkness, you can take responsibility for it. You stop acting it out unconsciously while pretending you're blameless. The third stage marks the most visible death, and the one that unsettles people around you the most. Your persona, the social mask you've worn for your entire life, falls away completely. The persona is the acceptable version of yourself you present to the world. Your professional identity. Your family role. The personality you built to earn approval and avoid rejection. You've likely spent years refining this mask, making it so convincing that even you believed it was who you truly were. You learned exactly how to speak so people would like you. You created different personas for different settings. One at work, another with family, another with friends. You became skilled at reading situations and adjusting yourself to meet expectations. During the final test, sustaining the persona becomes impossible. You can't fake it anymore. You can't summon enthusiasm for social performances. You can't make yourself care about impressing others. The behaviors that once helped you blend in now feel like exhausting theater. You're at a party, and instead of effortlessly working the room, you're watching yourself do it and feeling repelled by the act. You're in a meeting, and instead of managing your professional image, you become sharply aware of how artificial everyone sounds, including you. People who knew your persona grow confused and often threatened by the change. They keep expecting you to return to who you used to be. They offer advice on getting back to normal. They suggest therapy or medication to restore your former personality. Family members may accuse you of becoming selfish or changing for the worse. Friends may drift away because you're no longer playing the role they relied on. Colleagues may see you as difficult or unprofessional because you've stopped participating in corporate social rituals. Music. But the persona isn't coming back because it was never real. It was a construct, a survival strategy formed to move through a world that punished authenticity. Once you've seen what exists beneath the mask, you can't unsee it. You're left exposed in your essential self, without the protective layer that once made you socially acceptable. This phase feels like social death because, in many ways, it is. The version of you people knew no longer exists. They will either meet and music, accept who you actually are, or they will leave your life. After the persona dissolves and you're reduced to raw authenticity, most people expect everything to fall apart. Without social masks, without projections, without the shadow safely hidden, you should be completely vulnerable and psychologically destroyed. Society has conditioned you to believe that authenticity leads to ruin. But this is where Jung uncovered the insight that changes everything. Passing the final test isn't about battling darkness, rebuilding defenses, or rising above your humanity. It's about accepting and integrating everything you've discovered. This is the secret. Integration. Not self-improvement. Not transcendence. Not spiritual bypassing where you pretend to be above human darkness. Integration. You don't eliminate your shadow. You accept it as part of your whole self. You don't reconstruct the persona. You learn to engage genuinely while still reading social contexts intelligently. You don't hand power back to external authorities. You claim your own authority while staying humble about what you don't know. Integration means holding opposing forces within yourself without forcing them into false simplicity. You're capable of kindness and cruelty, so you choose kindness consciously while acknowledging your capacity for cruelty. You're capable of generosity and selfishness, So you practice generosity intentionally while preserving necessary self-interest. You carry both light and darkness, and you stop pretending the darkness isn't there. This is what Jung meant by the union of opposites. You're not trying to be purely good or purely light. You're embracing your full human complexity. This integration creates a form of psychological stability that most people never reach. When you're no longer fighting parts of yourself, when you've accepted your full nature, life stops knocking you off balance so easily. You've already faced the most terrifying thing, your own darkness. External events can no longer shatter you the way they shatter those who haven't done this work. So what happens after you pass the test? Jung documented specific capacities that emerge in people who successfully integrate unconscious material. These aren't supernatural powers. They're natural abilities that surface once you're no longer spending all your energy maintaining defenses. First, you develop a calm that appears almost unnatural in chaotic situations. While others panic, you remain grounded because you've already confronted the worst possible threat, your inner darkness. External disorder doesn't overwhelm you the way it overwhelms others. You've descended into the depths of your own psyche and returned. Losing a job, ending a relationship, facing rejection. These still hurt, but they don't erase your core sense of self. Second, your ability to read people becomes unsettlingly accurate. You see through social masks immediately because you're no longer hiding behind one yourself. You detect dishonesty and manipulation with ease because you've stopped lying to yourself. You sense emotional patterns and unspoken motives because you've made your own unconscious material conscious. People may accuse you of being judgmental or overly analytical, but you're simply perceiving what's actually there instead of what's being performed. This clarity can be isolating, because once you see, you can't unsee. You notice dysfunction in relationships, institutions, and systems that others are deeply invested in ignoring. Third, you become largely immune to manipulation. Attempts to control you through guilt, shame, or social pressure stop working. You've withdrawn your projections, so authority figures no longer hold psychological power over you. You've integrated your shadow, so others can't shame you with traits you've already accepted. You've released your persona, so approval no longer governs your actions. When someone tries to guilt you, you recognize it as manipulation rather than truth. When someone tries to shame you, you've already owned the qualities they're trying to weaponize. You become difficult to control, which is unsettling to people and systems that rely on control. Fourth, you develop an unshakable sense of direction. Not fate or predestination, but a deep inner knowing that your life carries meaning beyond status or achievement. You're connected to something larger than ego. This purpose doesn't come from believing you're special or chosen. It comes from accepting your individuality and recognizing that your particular mix of strengths, wounds, and experiences exists for a reason. You stop trying to live someone else's life or meet someone else's expectations. You begin living from your essential self. If you're still watching this video, if these descriptions reflect your lived reality, then you belong to a rare group. Jung referred to those who complete this journey as the awakened, though he carefully distinguished awakening from spiritual inflation. You're not special because you're superior to others. You're simply conscious in ways most people actively avoid. Your suffering wasn't random or meaningless. It was preparation. Every period of isolation taught you self-reliance. Every loss of interest in shallow pursuits redirected your energy toward depth. Every disturbing insight into your shadow expanded your capacity for psychological complexity. Every time your persona cracked, you became a little more real. The test wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to open you, to shatter the narrow identity that was suffocating your potential and force you to confront the full reality of who you are beneath conditioning and performance. You've already passed simply by understanding this. Most people never realize what's happening during their final test. They get medicated, distracted, or persuaded to rebuild their defenses and return to unconsciousness. They go back to their old lives with their psychological growth cut short. But you searched for meaning in what you went through. You refused to accept the standard explanation that something was wrong with you. You kept questioning until you found frameworks like Jung's that framed your experience as transformation rather than pathology. This choice, to seek understanding instead of comfort, is what marks someone who has truly passed. The secret Jung uncovered extends beyond individual psychology. Every person who integrates their unconscious material and completes the final test becomes a carrier of more evolved consciousness. You don't need to preach or teach. Your presence alone functions differently in the world. People sense that something fundamental has changed in you, even if they can't explain it. Some will be drawn to this because it gives them permission to pursue their own authenticity. They recognize in you a possibility they've been suppressing in themselves. Others will feel repelled, because your integrated state reflects everything they're still denying. Your presence becomes a mirror, and instead of examining their defenses, they blame you for their discomfort. Both reactions confirm that you're no longer operating on the same psychological level as those still identified with persona and projection. You've completed a developmental stage most humans never reach. Jung believed this process represents the next step in human evolution. Not biological, but psychological. As more individuals pass their personal final test and achieve integration, collective consciousness gradually shifts. What seems rare or impossible in one generation becomes normal in the next. You're not just healing yourself. You're mapping psychological territory that future generations will traverse more easily because you went first. Your willingness to face your darkness, drop your masks, and withdraw your projections sends ripples through the collective unconscious, making it slightly easier for others to do the same. The most beautiful outcome of passing the final test is that you don't lose your ability to love, feel joy, or connect. Many fear that integrating the shadow will make them cold or cruel. They worry that shedding the persona will isolate them. They fear that withdrawing projections means never trusting again. But the opposite happens. You become capable of real love for the first time because you're no longer loving to complete yourself. You experience genuine joy because it no longer depends on validation. You form authentic connections because you're not performing for acceptance. Everything becomes more vivid, more real. Music. More alive once experience is no longer filtered through layers of defense. Jung music observed that integrated individuals don't withdraw from life. They engage with it more fully because they're no longer afraid of their own depths. They can hold the full range of human experience, the ecstasy and the agony, the beauty and the horror, without fragmenting or dissociating. This capacity for wholeness is the gift the final test offers to those who pass consciously. Your presence here, watching this video, is evidence that you've passed. You recognized your own experience in Jung's framework. You understood that what felt like psychological death was actually a birth. You're ready to claim what your suffering has earned. Integration is your strength now. You contain multitudes and no longer fear any part of yourself. The darkness you once feared is now an ally. The masks you wore have decomposed into authenticity. The power you gave away has returned to where it belongs. You stand in your full psychological complexity as a complete human being. This is what Jung meant by individuation, becoming the person you were always meant to be beneath conditioning and collective programming. You're no longer like everyone else. And that's the point. You've moved beyond collective unconsciousness into something rarer and more valuable. Your next chapter won't resemble anyone else's path because you're writing it from your integrated self, not borrowed scripts or social expectations. You'll make choices that confuse those still living from persona. You'll set boundaries that feel harsh to those still projecting power. You'll speak truths that make people uncomfortable. And you'll do it not from cruelty or superiority, but because you can no longer live inauthentically. Comment below with the words, "I passed the test." Make this recognition conscious and deliberate. Claim what you've earned through suffering and the courage to face what you once denied. If this video helped you see your experience differently, like and subscribe for more insights into Jung psychology and the evolution of consciousness. Share this with someone who may be in the middle of their own final test, confused by everything falling apart. Let them know that what looks like breakdown is actually breakthrough. You found the secret that can change your life. The final test wasn't trying to destroy you. It was initiating you into the rare group of humans who truly know themselves. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.